Today, Iran claimed that it captured 17 spies working for the CIA and has sentenced some of them to death. President Trump said, quote, "That's totally a lie. They put out propaganda. They put out lies," end quote. The obvious problem is that President Trump puts out more lies per hour than the world can keep up with. Donald Trump's Secretary of State was not so certain about it. He did not confirm or deny the Iranian claim.
I would take with a significant grain of salt any Iranian assertion about actions that they've taken.
Few things demonstrate the complete failure of Trump foreign policy better than the current situation with Iran. The Obama administration successfully negotiated a complex deal with Iran that prevented Iran from building nuclear weapons. That deal was joined by other nations, and then Donald Trump ripped up that deal. Now U.S. relations with Iran are at a crisis point once again. On Friday, Iranian forces seized a British oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation against the United Kingdom for seizing an Iranian oil tanker 2 weeks earlier. Here's an audio recording of an Iranian naval officer communicating with a British naval officer in the region just before the Iranians seized that British ship.
No challenge is intended. No challenge is intended. I want to inspect the ship for security reason. Over.
Please confirm that you are not intending to violate international law by unlawfully attempting to board the MV Senator.
If you obey, you will be safe.
Diplomatic vandalism is what one British diplomat has called the Trump approach to Iran. One of the leaked cables from the British ambassador to the United States described the Trump approach to destroying the Iran deal this way. On the substance, the administration is set up upon an act of diplomatic vandalism, seemingly for ideological and personality reasons. It was Obama's deal. The British ambassador sent that memo to the then British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who is now Donald Trump's preferred candidate to become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The President of the United States publicly expressing a preference in a British political campaign is in and of itself an act of diplomatic vandalism. Here is the diplomatic vandal at work today talking about his policy in Afghanistan, not by saying what his policy is, but only by saying what his policy is not.
If we wanted to fight a war in Afghanistan and win it, I could win that war in a week. I just don't want to kill 10 million people. Does that make sense to you? I don't want to kill 10 million people. I have plans on Afghanistan that if I wanted to win that war, Afghanistan would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It would be over in literally in 10 days. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to go that route.
So the Trump Afghanistan policy is do not nuke Afghanistan. For more on the diplomatic vandalism of Donald Trump, we will turn to Ben Rhodes after this break. Today, the president tweeted, "The report of Iran capturing CIA spies is totally false. Zero truth." This is the kind of moment when having a zero truth presidency is costly. Ben Rhodes is back with us. Ben, how do we make sense of this story today, if we can, of Iran saying they have captured CIA, what they're calling CIA spies, and maybe sentencing some of them to death? President Trump says it's all lies. Mike Pompeo says nothing, doesn't say anything one way or the other.
Well, first of all, Lawrence, I do think the Iranians have been prone to making all kinds of claims in the past when they want to have a provocative posture towards the United States. It's quite likely that they are exaggerating or making this up. I will say, though, what's important here is it's of a pattern of provocative actions that they've taken since Trump pulled out of the Iran deal. He said that pulling out of the Iran deal would fix everything. It would fix Iran's provocative behavior, keep them from getting a nuclear weapon. The opposite has happened. Iran is preparing to reaccumulate its stockpile of nuclear materials. Iran is seizing tankers. Iran is making announcements about seizing CIA spies. Iran shot down a U.S. drone. The problem is getting worse. Trump has created a crisis. It's a crisis of his own making with Iran. The rest of the world does not trust what we say because we have a president who lies all the time. And the rest of the world is incredibly frustrated with us because if you're the Brits, you're saying our tanker never would have been seized in the first place if Iran didn't ratchet up this crisis, if Trump didn't ratchet up this crisis by pulling out of the Iran deal. So we're right on the brink of a potential conflict with Iran, seeing provocation after provocation because of what the President of the United States did.
And the president says that he's ready for the absolute worst case scenario with Iran. The worst case scenario with a foreign country is always war. So there's Donald Trump saying he's absolutely ready to go to war in Iran, in effect, which, again, is not believable from Donald Trump.
Yeah, we're in the worst of all worlds here, Lawrence, because he set out on this ideological agenda, as the British ambassador himself said, to tear up Obama's deal just because Obama negotiated it. Incredibly predictably, the Iranians respond through provocation. But we also saw Trump get to the brink of launching a military strike on Iran, which would have launched potentially a very significant war in the Middle East. And he blinked and he pulled back. The Iranians saw him blink and pull back. And so they're thinking, OK, we've got an administration that on the one hand is stealing for conflict, led by ideologues like John Bolton in the administration, and a president who doesn't want to have that war. And so what the Iranians are doing is trying to get the attention of the world to say, hey, come make a deal with us. Because you don't want the war that Trump could get you into, but you also don't want us to get a nuclear weapon. So here we are with the Iranians pushing the envelope, Trump not wanting to pull the trigger on the war, but not willing to do the diplomacy to avoid it or to avoid a nuclear Iran. It's a strategically incoherent position. We're totally isolated from our allies, particularly in Europe. And this is not where the United States of America should be, nor is it where we needed to be, because we had solved this problem. We had a nuclear deal that solved the problem, and Trump's the one who tore it up.
Ben Rhodes, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.